Incredible moment, Black woman exposes CEO's mockery in German, transforming the room forever. The air in the downtown community center hummed with excitement and trepidation. Maya stood at the front of the room, her heart pounding like a drum against her chest. Today was pivotal. Today she would bring her dreams to life. As a determined 28-year-old Black woman born into a world that often overlooked her talent, this was her moment. Raised in a bustling working-class neighborhood by her tireless single mother, Maya had learned resilience from an early age. She would not let this chance slip away. As she reviewed her notes, the atmosphere thickened with anticipation. Executives in sharp suits buzzed around, their laughter mingling with whispered gossip, but Maya zeroed in on one voice that seemed to drown them all out. It was Richard, the CEO, notorious for his sharp tongue and biting remarks. He shot jokes into the crowd, his words flying through the room like arrows, aimed precisely at her. Then it happened, a garbled joke in German aimed at her modest background. The laughter erupted like a storm, crashing down on her, and for a fleeting moment, Maya felt the heat of humiliation wash over her. That laughter felt like a knife, cutting deep into her heart. Yet within that pain, something ignited inside her, a fury and a deep desire for justice. Many in the audience shifted, a murmur racing through the room. Maya's gut tightened. She could choose to remain silent, but this was about more than her career. It was about breaking the chains that held so many back. Her voice rang out, steady and fierce. You mock me for my background, but I'm here today to speak truth to power. The words hung like heavy stones in the air. The audience fell mute, tension snapping like a taut wire. She could feel eyes on her, some widening in surprise, others nodding in recognition. There was a collective unearthing of a truth long buried, the subtle discrimination that tainted their world. In that moment, Maya didn't just call out Richard, she challenged every smirk that had ever dismissed her, every whisper that had ever tried to silence her. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Maya's revelation left a ripple of unease but also a flicker of hope. Shifts in seats, murmurs of encouragement created an electric atmosphere. It was as if she had thrown open a window, letting light pour in after years of stifling darkness. Richard's confident facade began to crack, and in that vulnerability, the crowd shifted, inspired to consider the weight of biases they, too, bore. Maya locked eyes with Richard, her heart racing. A whirlwind of defiance and trepidation swirled within her. Would they embrace this flickering moment of change, or would it be met with resistance? The stakes had risen, and the room felt alive, a living testament to the struggle of so many. What would unfold next? Would her boldness spark a real transformation, or would it provoke a backlash that could silence her once again? Maya held her breath, the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. She noticed Richard shifting in his seat, a testament to her bold declaration. The laughter that had once echoed throughout the room fell silent, replaced by a charged stillness. Even the executives, so used to dismissing others, seemed captivated by her courage. Thank you, she continued, her voice growing stronger as she fought through the tension. Thank you for showing us all how far we still need to go. Your mockery reveals not just your ignorance, but the walls we must break down together. The crowd was divided, caught between their norms and the raw truth rising from her words. A few heads nodded in agreement, glimmers of realization flickering in their eyes. Maya felt emboldened. In this moment, she had become more than just a speaker, she was a catalyst for change. An older woman in the front row leaned forward, breaking the silence. You're absolutely right, Maya. We have to acknowledge our biases. Her tone was steady, an anchor amid the brewing storm. And it starts here, with us. Those words sparked a ripple of murmurs throughout the space. People began sharing their own experiences, stories of exclusion, and moments when they felt unseen. Maya's heart swelled. This was not just a confrontation, it was a movement. Richard's expression darkened. "I never intended to offend," he began, but his words were met with skepticism. Doubts about his sincerity swirled in the air. He struggled to regain control, attempting to reinforce his authority with a rehearsed smile. "Let us refocus on the agenda, shall we?" "Not so fast," Maya interjected. "This is more important than your agenda. The truth is, many of us have lived in a world where our voices were muted by such mockery and misunderstanding." The room buzzed with energy, people eager to share their stories. A young man in a crisp suit spoke up, his cheeks flushed. "I used to laugh at jokes like those, thinking they were harmless. But now I see how they hurt." Maya felt a surge of hope mingling with urgency. She realized they were at a pivotal moment not just for her, but for everyone who had ever felt marginalized. If we want to change the narrative, we have to start right now. No more silencing. Richard's discomfort was palpable, his facade cracking under the weight of truth. "This isn't the time to air grievances," he said, raising his voice slightly in a desperate attempt to reclaim authority. But Maya pressed on. "This is the perfect time. Too many have remained silent for too long, and we deserve more than jokes cloaked in ignorance. Every voice matters, even if it's uncomfortable to hear." The room erupted as others joined in support for Maya. Applause filled the air, each clap resonating with the collective acknowledgement of a need for change. The momentum shifted, and Maya realized she had incited something powerful. Suddenly, Richard's defenses came crashing down. "I'll listen. I want to understand," he said, vulnerability creeping into his voice, mingling surprise with resignation. A hush fell over the crowd again, but this time it was filled with possibility. As the tension hung like fog in the air, Maya felt an unspoken agreement form. This moment could spark far-reaching changes. But would they follow through, or would this chance slip back into silence? She knew one thing for sure, the conversation had only just begun. As hope and doubt collided in her heart, Maya thought of her mother, the sacrifices that had shaped her, and the countless others watching. "I'm ready for this dialogue," she said, inching closer to Richard. "Are you?" All eyes were on them, and as the weight of expectation enveloped the room, a new question lingered: would Richard take her hand in unity or retreat back to his throne of privilege? Richard blinked, his mind racing. The murmur of voices blended into a cacophony that threatened to drown him. Those were not just whispers of dissent, they were declarations of truth and calls to action. His throne felt more like a seat of shame. He looked at Maya, her silhouette framed by the harsh lights overhead, her eyes steady with expectation. "Let us take a step back," he said, but the words lacked conviction, his authority waning like a candle flickering in a draft. "I do want to understand, but we can't solve everything today." He sounded more defensive than he intended. Maya's heart raced. She could feel the energy shift again, like a tidal wave crashing against a dam. She took another deep breath, steadying herself. "Maybe we can't solve it all today," she started, her voice softening but still firm. "But we can begin. This doesn't have to be just another meeting where we nod our heads and push aside the real issues." The silence in the room was thick. Several people glanced at each other, some with raised brows, others with frowns of agreement. The executives who once laughed now looked puzzled. They were wrestling with their own discomfort as the reality of their actions sank in. "Richard, you have the power to change things," Maya said boldly, her insistence echoing in the room. "This is a chance. Here. Now. We need your voice, not as an authority, but as an ally." Richard's jaw tightened. Did he want to be seen as allies with someone like Maya, who had publicly dissected him? But amidst his initial revulsion came a whisper of doubt. Had he been so blind that he couldn't see the walls he had helped build, brick by brick? As the seconds ticked by, Maya continued. This isn't just about you or me. It's about everyone who stands against the tide of ignorance. Her gaze drifted, resting on faces in the audience. Think of the people who have felt your jokes cut like blades. They're here now, and they matter. The older woman from the front row nodded fervently, prompting others to join her. It was a ripple that swelled into waves of agreement. Maya pushed forward, sensing the door had creaked ajar. We all want change. So let us give it a name, a purpose. It starts with honesty. Why not begin by sharing stories right now? Richard swallowed hard, the room was watching him. There was a shifting of chairs as people settled in, prepared to listen. He could still feel the pride in his chest battling against the growing urge to crumble as they all looked to him for direction. I used to think those jokes were harmless, he started slow, his voice trembling with disbelief at his own admission. I never considered the harm. Maya's breath caught, but she remained patient, a beacon of hope against the storm. That's how change often starts, Richard, she encouraged. Awareness. His shoulders slumped slightly as the words rolled out. I want to apologize to everyone I've hurt. He glanced at the crowd, his heart racing. Every voice matters. I'm sorry for mine. The room erupted again, this time with a mix of surprise and cautious hope. A collective sigh seemed to rise, tension mingling with possibility. Maya stood tall, feeling the momentum swell around her. But just as the atmosphere brightened, doubt crept in again. Could he really change? Would they believe him? What if this fragile spark of understanding fizzled just like the last 5 lost in the echoes of promised change? Maya felt a flicker of hope but still held the weight of skepticism. They were at the precipice of transformation, yet she knew the journey was just beginning. She turned to Richard, a question glimmering in her eyes. Are you ready to do what it takes? But before Richard could respond, a voice from the back interrupted. What happens when the lights go out, and the cameras are gone? A shudder of uncertainty rippled through the crowd as they turned to face the speaker. Who was ready to take action when it counted? Richard's heart sank as the words of the unseen voice echoed in the expansive hall. The weight they carried was undeniable, and he felt every gaze pierce through the facade he had worn for so long. The air was thick now, charged with tension, and every second felt like a lifetime. Maya instinctively shifted forward, her eyes narrowing in challenge. Exactly, she shot back, her voice steady but laced with urgency. That's the reality. Change isn't only about words when the spotlight is on you. It's when you're out of sight, when it's just you and your choices. Richard clenched his fists, wanting to respond, to defend himself against the fear creeping into his chest. But as he looked at Maya, the fire in her eyes met the quiet resolve in the crowd. He sensed an unexpected alliance, a collective willingness to confront the truth. If it's not just for show, Richard, then what will you do in the dark? The same voice prodded again, fueling the unease. A murmur rippled through the audience, many shifting in their seats, heads nodding slowly in agreement. They were wrestling with the reality that at the heart of this meeting, change wasn't merely a symbol or an empty promise, it demanded actual commitments. Richard shook his head, fighting against the tide of disbelief. I'm standing here, he protested faintly, trying to gather his scattered thoughts. This means something. It does, Maya affirmed, her tone dropping to one that wrapped around Richard like a protective cloak. But it's what comes next that shapes your legacy. The future is built on actions, not just words. He blinked rapidly, his throat tightening as he considered her words. A buzz of murmured agreements filled the room, and he could see people leaning in, waiting for him. The vulnerability was raw, yet something inside him stirred a push against his ingrained instincts to shield himself from this change. Maybe I need to hear some stories, he said hesitantly, feeling the vulnerability shift within him. I mean real ones. I want to understand. Someone in the front row stood. It was the older woman who had nodded earlier, her eyes glittering with tears. I lost my job because of the rumors your jokes created, she began, her voice shaking. People didn't see me as a professional. They saw a punchline. Her confession rippled through the crowd, silencing the unease. Richard felt the weight of her words. The laughter that had once enveloped him now felt inappropriate, a bitter truth that clawed at his chest. As others began to share their experiences, painful recollections that peeled back the layers of smiles and laughter, Richard listened intently. Each narrative was a piercing reminder of the power he had wielded unwittingly. Some spoke of silent struggles, others of explosive confrontations. A young man took the floor next, visibly shaking but resolute. I never felt safe, he said simply. In a space where I should have felt welcomed, every joke pushed me further away. Richard slid down in his chair, grappling with disbelief. This was happening right in front of him, a flood of voices brimming with pain, yet permeated by an undeniable strength. Maya stepped closer, a quiet urgency in her voice. If you want to be an ally, then shoulder this burden. These stories matter. This is your opportunity to take the steps everyone has been waiting for. Suddenly, Richard's phone buzzed in his pocket, a message from his assistant, a reminder of his busy schedule, of his commitments waiting outside this realm of truth. He hesitated. The choice lay bare before him. He could slip through the cracks, back to the comfort of routine, or he could dive deeper into this moment of raw humanity unfolding. Maya's gaze didn't waver, it was fierce and challenging. The room was waiting for him, suspended in this moment of vulnerability. Will you choose to stand with us, Richard? She asked, her voice strong like a lifeline amidst the chaos. But as Richard opened his mouth to respond, a voice from the back challenged him again. Words are easy, but can you keep this conviction when the world turns its back on you? The stakes had never felt higher. Would he step across that line, or would he retreat into the shadows? The crowd watched, breaths held, as Richard faced the depth of his decision, teetering on the edge of something monumental yet uncertain. What would he choose in the moment that defined him? Richard felt every heartbeat pounding in his ears, drowning out the muted sounds of the room. He could almost hear the hum of the overhead lights, a stark reminder of the reality waiting outside. His eyes darted around, seeking a lifeline, a sign. Suddenly, the laughter that once felt like a shield enveloping him now felt like chains, binding him to a past he wanted to escape. Richard, it's not about making a grand gesture, Maya's voice broke through his turmoil. It's about the small steps you take day by day. It's about showing up when it's inconvenient. A knot twisted in his stomach. She was right. The fear that gripped him was nothing compared to the fear those in the crowd had faced daily. They had taken a leap of faith to share their stories, to expose wounds that had been reopened for this moment. Would he be the one to step back? No. I can't. I can't just walk away from this, he managed to say, his voice steadier now. You all deserve better than my empty words. I want to be better. A ripple of surprise flowed through the crowd. Some murmured soft encouragements, while others exchanged wary glances, waiting to see what might come next. Better how? Echoed from the back. The skepticism hung in the air like a storm cloud, and Richard felt the weight of its menace on his shoulders. By listening, he said, his own resolve energizing him. I want to hear the stories, the struggles. I want to understand how I've contributed to this atmosphere. Maya nodded, her expression softening a bit. That's the first step, Richard. But action is still needed beyond understanding. Richard took a deep breath, the air heavy with possibility. Then, let us discuss how I can use my platform. I want to bring attention to these stories. Help amplify your voices. Maybe we can even start a series, a forum, some way to keep this conversation alive. The crowd's murmur grew louder, and Richard could sense a shift, the atmosphere buzzing with hope and skepticism intertwined. He felt lighter, as if naming his intentions had unshackled something deep within. There was potential here to create real change, to rebuild trust that had been shattered by careless words. But then he remembered the world outside the commitments waiting for him, the usual scenes of apologizing, justifying, promising to do better. Would he have the strength to hold this space amidst that chaos? Richard met Maya's gaze again, her fierce spirit igniting something within him. "It won't be easy," she warned gently. "You'll face backlash. People cling to comfort more than they do to change." "I know," he replied, conviction spilling out like an open wound, ragged yet healing. "But what's the point of comfort when it perpetuates hurt?" His words echoed around the room, a declaration that seemed to hang, charged with electricity. The eyes of the crowd were now fixated on him, expectation crackling in the air. "Richard," someone in the front row spoke up again, voice full of emotion, "if you genuinely seek change, then show us. Be the example." The responsibility sank deep, but he felt a strange sort of liberation in it. "I will. I'll show up. I will fight for these stories. I will." Suddenly, his phone buzzed again, this time more insistent. The reality of his life outside these walls tugged at him like a distant siren. Could he really abandon that for this? Or was it time to build a life that merged both worlds? "Maya," he said, a thread of determination weaving through his voice, "can you help guide me through this?" She stepped toward him, the fierce light in her eyes now softened with understanding. "Together, Richard. But it's your turn to steer the ship." As the words left her lips, Richard felt the weight of the moment. Was he ready to navigate this new tide? Could he truly redefine himself in the eyes of those he once let down? And just as he prepared to take that leap, another voice broke through the collective silence, "But will those at the top, will they really let you? What happens when they see you changing the course?" His heart raced. The challenge was laid bare before him. How deep was his commitment? With all eyes on him, the next steps felt monumental. This was no longer just about words or promises, it was about taking a stand no matter the cost. Richard took a breath, ready to answer, unsure yet resolute, as the crowd waited to see what he would do next. Would he carve out a new path or fall back into the shadows once again? Richard felt the weight of the room pressing in, the energy vibrating with anticipation. The silence felt heavy, like a weight resting on his chest. He shifted his stance, planting his feet firmly on the ground, trying to summon enough courage to face the reality of the challenge laid out before him. "I won't back down," he finally said, his voice trembling only slightly. "Not this time." The crowd seemed to collectively draw a breath, their eyes widening. Richard could feel the disbelief mixed with curiosity. He searched faces, looking for signs of support, something to bolster his resolve. He caught Maya's gaze, her nod acting like a silent encouragement, a reminder that he wasn't alone in this. Maybe you're right," he continued, addressing the voice that questioned him. "Change won't be welcomed by everyone. But does that mean I should shrink back? If I can't stand firm in this moment, how can I claim to fight for any cause?" The murmurs in the room grew louder, voices mingling with cautious hope. Richard's heart pounded in his chest like a relentless drum. He took another deep breath, adrenaline surging through him as he prepared to unveil his plan. "The truth is, I've been part of the problem," he admitted, the weight of his words hanging in the air. "It's easy to float along on the surface, but that's not real leadership. If I genuinely want to help, I need to disrupt the comfort of that surface." "Disrupt it how?" Someone challenged from the back, their voice steady and firm. Richard's resolve turned to steel. "I plan to host workshops. I want to bring stories to the forefront. To share what we often hide. Sharing authentically will build bridges, not walls. This isn't just about me changing, it's about us remembering our shared humanity." A ripple of approval coursed through the crowd. Richard could feel the hesitation melting, replaced by a budding sense of possibility. We should not just gather to talk, he added, a new conviction piercing through. We need to actively serve each other. I want to create task forces where we can brainstorm and strategize real change. Let us not just speak about it, let's be about it. His words flowed, gaining momentum. And with every sentence, Richard felt the chains of his past loosening. There was fear, yes, but also a thrilling sense of liberation. Tell me, a voice from the side chimed in. It was a woman with fierce determination reflected in her eyes. Will it cost you anything? Your power? Your position? Will you risk losing it all? Richard froze for a moment, the question cutting through the excitement like a knife. The crowd waited, breaths held, while he grappled with the implications of his response. Everything worth fighting for comes with risks, he finally replied, steadying himself. If I can't put it all on the line for this, if I can't lose my comfort, then maybe I don't deserve to lead. A wave of emotion washed over him, and he saw nods all around. Maya's eyes sparkled with pride, and Richard felt that surge of faith in himself returning. He had sparked something here, a spirit of resilience and courage that surged through the crowd. But then, out of nowhere, another disruption rang out. The door burst open with a loud bang. His assistant, Jenna, stood framed in the doorway, wide-eyed and breathless. Richard! You need to see this. It's urgent. The room shifted as whispers filled the air. Richard's heart beat faster. The moment had turned electric, charged with uncertainty. What could be so important? What was waiting for him outside this newfound resolve? He turned back to the crowd, his heart and mind racing. Would this news derail everything he had just ignited, or would it propel him forward? Can you hold on a moment? He asked Jenna, feeling the weight of his decision land heavily. Would he prioritize the urgent call of his job or stay and foster this moment of change that felt so crucial? Silence enveloped him, the room alive with tension, waiting for his next words. Richard could feel the collective breath of the crowd hovering around him, the air thick with anticipation. Jenna's urgency cut into the atmosphere like a knife. He knew this moment was fragile, teetering on the edge of change. But the call of duty echoed in his mind, urging him to act. Everything we're building here is important, he said, his voice steady against the storm of emotions. But I need to understand what's happening outside these walls. Give me a moment. He stepped toward Jenna, and as he did, he felt the crowd shift. Some exchanged troubled glances, while others leaned forward, their eyes bright with expectation. Richard's heart ached a deep pull toward both responsibilities. He felt their hope, their drive, and yet he couldn't ignore Jenna's alarm. Richard, she breathed, lowering her tone. You need to see this now. The media is here, and there's a live stream picking up what's happened. They're already framing it. His stomach dropped. Was this about him? About that moment of vulnerability he had just shared? He felt a rush of dread mixed with fear. His resolve now battled with overwhelming anxiety. What do you mean, framing? Richard's voice was barely a whisper. Apparently, someone caught wind of the changes you're proposing, and they're twisting it to make it look like you're just paying lip service. They want to destroy what you've built before it even has a chance to breathe. The weight of her words hung in the air. Richard could sense the energy in the room transforming again, their hopes shifting to worry. But then another voice rose above the anxious murmurs. What are they trying to hide? It was Maya. Her voice was fierce, suddenly cutting through the oppressive dark. If this is about truth, we can't let fear dictate our actions. We're here for something real. Richard's chest tightened. He was torn. The urgency of the news clashed with the inspiration he had opened within this group. What if he walked away? Would he lose them? Or, on the other hand, could he lead them through this struggle, if it meant emerging stronger? Listen, he said, turning back to the crowd, letting the pause stretch in the silence. You all deserve better than just words and fear. This meeting was supposed to galvanize action, and I want to let them silence us. Not when we're standing on the brink of something meaningful. Heads nodded as he spoke, spurred on by their collective resolve. Richard could feel the energy shift again, the courage rising like steam from a kettle. Jenna, he finally decided, steeling his spine, let us face this together. This moment of challenge, it's also an opportunity to prove we're serious about change. Will you stay alongside me? She looked at him, her expression softening momentarily, pride mixed with the anxiety reflected in her eyes. But, she nodded. Absolutely. But how? The media just let us talk this through. What if we invite them in? Richard said suddenly, the idea sparking. What if we open the workshop to the public? They can witness our process. Let us pull back the curtains and let them see the heart of our discussions, raw and unfiltered. Brilliant, Maya jumped in with a smile. If they want to portray us as a joke, let it be a performance of authenticity. Let us show them who we are. Excitement surged through the crowd again, and Richard could see the tide turning beneath the weight of his leader's heart. The room erupted into a buzz of renewed energy. Someone else spoke up, I can contact the press. If we move quickly, they won't get to twist our narrative. As the crowd started to envelop Richard, sharing ideas and discussing the next steps, he watched the shift in their expressions. Fear began to morph into determination. A seed of rebellion against the media's manipulative grasp sprouted in their eyes. But in the heart of the chaos, a nagging feeling lingered. Could this chaotic move turn against him, or would this be the spark to set them free? With his emotions swirling, Richard felt the weight of leadership settle firmly on his shoulders again. This could either redefine their mission or derail it completely. Are we ready to take this risk? He asked, raising his voice above the noise, uncertainty coursing through him like electricity. And at that moment, the air thickened with expectation, like the stillness before a storm, as everyone held on to the question, would they rise together or shatter apart? The chatter around Richard intensified, a symphony of nerves infused with newfound adrenaline. He scanned the faces surrounding him, some familiar, others still a mystery. This diverse group of passionate people had come together, united not just by a mission but also by shared dreams. And now, Richard stood at the crossroads of their hopes and fears. His heart drumming in his chest, Richard took a deep breath. Okay, everyone, let us focus. If we invite the media in, we need to prepare for this. We can't let them spin our narrative. Jenna stepped forward, her brows knitted in thought. How do we make sure we're showing our best selves? We're not just here to defend ourselves, we need to shine. Right, Richard said, energized by her suggestion. We should organize a series of sessions. Real discussions, real issues. Let them see the struggles, the victories, the very heart of this community. Maya nodded vigorously. And we need to highlight individual stories. This isn't just about the collective, it's the personal sacrifices, the triumphs that have brought us here. Those moments are powerful. The energy in the room thrummed with excitement as ideas flowed freely. Someone proposed a live panel, while another suggested interactive workshops to engage the audience directly. Each idea layered on top of the other, creating a vibrant tapestry of possibility. But as the planning escalated, Richard felt a nagging doubt creep back in. What if they weren't ready for this level of exposure? What if the honesty they craved also opened the door to even harsher criticism? He pushed those thoughts aside, determined to lead them out of the darkness. Let us set a date for the event, Richard announced, his voice steady despite the uncertainty roiling in his stomach. We can do this, together. The crowd erupted into cheers, the sound washing over him like a wave of hope. Richard's spirit lifted. They were no longer just reacting to circumstances, they were taking control, crafting their narrative. As he looked around, the buzz of determination overtook the room. A sense of unity filled the air, bonding them with a shared goal that felt both tangible and powerful. And just as Richard was about to dive into specifics, time slots, logistics, and roles, his phone buzzed wildly in his pocket. Pulling it out, he noticed several notifications flashing across the screen, a series of messages from his mentor, Michael. Richard's stomach twisted as he read. Urgent. You need to be aware the opposition is gathering support. They are framing your name with a smear campaign. It's more aggressive than ever. The words hit him hard, as if he'd been socked in the gut. Just as they were about to stake their claim, forces countering their movement poised to strike. His hands trembled slightly as he looked up at Jenna, then at the crowd still buzzing with excitement. Hey, listen up. He called, the crowd quieting down once more. I just got some news. Our opposition is mobilizing. This isn't just a media battle anymore. We need to be ready. They want to play fair. The air thickened again, but Richard could feel the resolve settle back over them like a blanket. If anything, this revelation solidified their purpose. They were not backing down. As whispers surged through the group, Richard glanced around, watching expressions shift from euphoria to focus, from bravado to strategy. A wave of determination washed over him. Anyone who's willing to fight with me, stand up. One by one, people rose to their feet, and Richard felt a rush of warmth coursing through him. They were a force to be reckoned with, and as he looked at the faces around him, he knew whatever came next, they would face it head-on. But would they be strong enough against the storm that was brewing outside, or would their newfound empowerment falter under pressure? In that pivotal moment, Richard realized something crucial: this movement was much bigger than him. It was about connection, authenticity, and the courage to stand up in the face of adversity. As a tension hung in the air, Richard closed his eyes for a moment, letting everything swirl around him. Tomorrow, we gather our voices, but will we be brave enough to keep them loud? With that question echoing in everyone's hearts, Richard felt the weight of their farewells looming. As hope hung in the balance, a figure approached, eyes narrowed and intent, adding a layer of mystery to an already charged atmosphere. What new challenges awaited them just on the horizon? Richard's breath caught in his throat as the figure moved closer. A tall woman, her expression fierce, stepped out of the shadows and into the dim light of the room. She couldn't have been more than 30, yet her presence commanded attention. There was a grace about her, blended with raw determination. The tension shifted, everyone leaned in, curious. Who are you? Richard asked, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. I'm Mara, she replied, her voice firm but warm. And I heard what's going on. I can help. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Richard's mind raced with questions. How much did she know? Could she really help them? He was still processing the urgency of the opposition when a palpable wave of hope erupted among the group. What can you do? Maya asked, her brow furrowing as she stepped closer to Mara. I've been following your movement, Mara explained, her eyes sweeping the room. I know how they're operating. They laugh at your pain, twist your words. But it can be flipped. Jenna piped up, flipped how? Mara took a breath, excitement glimmering in her eyes. The stories you share, the struggles, they unearth truths. You can turn their mockery into a rallying cry. We can organize a counter-campaign, a way to reshape what they're saying. We create our narrative. Richard felt his pulse quicken. Her energy was infectious. Could this be the breakthrough they needed? Let us be clear, Mara continued, her tone taking a serious turn. We must organize swiftly. The more we react, the more they'll twist this against us. We need to get ahead of them. The atmosphere crackled with possibility. Richard glanced around the room, searching for reassurance in his friends' faces. Instead of the uncertainty he feared, he found excitement and determination mirrored back at him. What do we start with? He asked, hunger for action pushing him forward. I propose a series of storytelling sessions, Mara said. Not just at your event but over social media. We turn every personal story into a weapon against the smear. Highlight resilience, love, community, everything they can't twist. The room erupted into murmurs of agreement. Light and strength shone in their eyes as Richard watched them hold each other's gaze, each person finding courage in shared experiences. Richard felt a surge of adrenaline, a roaring fire of defiance igniting in his chest. Let us do it. Let us gather every voice, every story. Together, we become unbreakable. The enthusiasm surged, and hands shot up around the room. Ideas flowed freely. Hashtags, video testimonies, and public speaking rehearsals emerged. The atmosphere was electric, driven by shared hope. But as plans materialized, Richard couldn't shake the caution in the back of his mind. The opposition was not just a faceless enemy, they were organized, powerful, and seemingly relentless. Their mockery would be a weapon, but Richard knew they had their own blades polished now, stories that no one could mock. Then Mara caught his eye. You okay? She asked, her voice softer. He nodded, though uncertainty lingered within him. Just thinking, can we be ready for the storm? Do we have the strength to face what they'll throw at us? Together? Mara asked, her gaze steady. You may just surprise yourself. With that simple affirmation, Richard sensed a shift in the air. Together, they could carve a space of truth in a world muddy with lies. As the room buzzed with planning, Richard's phone buzzed again. Hesitating, he picked it up, dread settling in the pit of his stomach. His heart sank. The screen showed a video, one featuring a clip of the opposition as spokesperson ridiculing their movement. His hands gripped the device tightly. They were prepared to attack. Everyone! He shouted again, silencing the room. We need to brace ourselves. This isn't just an event, we're entering a fight. The crowd fell silent, but a determined fire ignited in their eyes. They were ready. But Richard wondered, would their courage be enough when the battle began? What unseen forces were conspiring against them, and would they be prepared to counterattack? The tension in the room hung thick as Richard stood at the front, the weight of impending conflict pressing down like a heavy fog. The faces before him, once filled with excitement, now reflected a mix of determination and fear. With every heartbeat echoing an urgent rhythm, he felt the groundwork of the battle they were about to face deepen beneath their collective spirit. Listen up! Richard called out, slicing through the silence. What they're doing is not just mockery. It's an attempt to silence the stories we carry. But together, we can flip this narrative. Maya stepped closer, her fierce gaze locking on him. We are our own heroes. Every story shared will echo, each voice will rise. Let us turn their mockery into our anthem. The crowd buzzed with renewed energy, sparkles of hope glimmering in their eyes. Mara cast a glance around. We need to harness this momentum. Let us kick off a digital campaign now while we prepare for the larger event. We'll take their words, their laughter, and turn it against them. Richard felt the rush of adrenaline surge through him. We make our stories undeniable. We reclaim our truth and share it with the world, loud and clear. Hands shot up, ideas bouncing like popcorn. Hashtags, slogans, clips of raw testimonies sketched out on a whiteboard, a beautiful chaos of collective creation. Each suggestion added another layer of strength to their resolve. Yet, as excitement swirled, Richard felt a flicker of doubt creep back in. What if we make it worse? What if they retaliate even harder? Mara zeroed in on him, her voice unwavering. What they want is for you to doubt yourself. The moment you back down is the moment they win. But if you stand together, fear loses its power. With a shared glance, the room reaffirmed their commitment. Richard's heart swelled. This was a team forged in fire. We trust each other, right? He asked, looking earnestly at the eager faces. We can navigate this storm if we're unified. A chorus of affirmatives erupted like a wave crashing against the shore. Richard's chest expanded with hope as he realized they were ready to face the scrutiny together as a community. As they began to piece together the campaign, they knew it wouldn't be easy. The path ahead was fraught with risk, but every plan they conceived solidified their resolve. Stories were crafted, raw emotions stitched together in an outpouring of solidarity. "Here's our first video," Richard said, posting it online. "Tonight, we reveal the truth, but we do it with respect and pride. We honor our journeys." Fingers flew across keyboards, excitement palpable as hashtags streamed in, "Reclaim our voice, truth matters, together we rise." Richard could sense a shift as notifications buzzed, aware that people were tuning in, watching, and engaging. Yet as the hours passed and the world beyond the conference room prepared to take notice, Richard's heart skipped nervously. He had faced adversity before, but this was different. This felt personal, like the very fabric of his being held on the balance of shared voices. Then, the screen lit up again, this time showing clips of their campaign interspersed with the opposition's jeers. Richard's heart sank, but a flicker of resilience sparked. They couldn't back down now. They were more than just targets, they were a living testament to every struggle overcome, every success celebrated. Let us share our stories with the world. We're more than a punchline. Richard shouted, his voice steady and resolute. Unwavering unity filled the room as they prepared to meet whatever came their way. As the sun began to set outside, Richard felt the steam of possibility rise, merging with the palpable energy in the space. "This is just the beginning," he said, his voice rising above the lingering tensions. "No matter what happens, we're fighting for every single story. For every single voice." With Maya beside him, holding his hand over the plans they had made, they knew that together they could withstand anything. As claps broke the tension, whispers of hope spiraled upward like a phoenix rising from the ashes. This was their moment, their victory in motion. And while uncertainty lurked on the outskirts like a shadow, Richard felt ready to face it all. "Finally," he declared, "together we will create the change that is long overdue. This is our moment." The crowd erupted in applause, the spirit of transformation warm and pulsing, binding them in collective purpose. Together, they were unstoppable. With the heart of the movement beating strong, they prepared to take on the world, knowing that the time for whispered truths had ended. And as they stepped into the light, the stories within them ignited a flame that could not be extinguished. This was only the beginning. Now, the moment has come for you to act. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this ending, tell us what resonated with you. And don't wait not even one more second to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let us spread the voice of change together.